Good afternoon and welcome to the PASS Database Administration Virtual Chapter meeting. Today we're going to have a presentation on Azure SQL Database, how to keep your business running when disaster strikes. Tayob Ali is the speaker. My name's Julie Blomquist and I'm moderating today for the group. And our virtual chapter is sponsored by HVR Software. We would really like to thank them for sponsoring us today. We are a PASS chapter, and here is the community news. The PASS Summit 2019 is coming up in November. If you use the discount code VGDISC, GOE, you will receive a $150 discount. There's also a PASS Summit blogger program. Here's the information so that you could become a blogger for the PASS Summit. The pre-conference sessions have been released, and these are the lectures and the link to be able to go to them. There is going to be a PASS marathon all about the end of the support of SQL Server 2008. There's also PASS Facebook Live that you're able to attend. We are one of the many PASS virtual chapters. Here's a listing of them. You would just go to your PASS login and associate yourself with either a virtual chapter or a physical chapter, and then you'll receive emails about the lectures. SQL Saturdays are one-day mini conferences. They're held all over the world, and these are the ones that are coming up. And this is how you stay connected with PASS. PASS also has a career center where you can view jobs and post. So today we have Tayob Ali. He's an accomplished technical leader with a proven record of success. He spent the last 13 years working with SQL Server and MongoDB platform, both on-premise and in the cloud. His experience includes 3 major business sectors: the financial industry, e-commerce, and healthcare. Tayob has a hands-on experience in managing large database projects, including large data migrations, complex process design, testing and deployment, performance tuning, long-term capacity planning. Tayob, he's currently working at GMO LLC as a lead DBA, focusing on the automation, improving and streamlining operational workflows, plan and preparation for cloud migration. He's a regular speaker at local and virtual PASS chapters, also SQL Saturday and at the Azure conference. So I'm going to pass it over to Tayob. And you are now the presenter.
Thank you, Julie. I'm just going to make sure that, do you see my screen now?
Yes, I do, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, are you seeing the presenter screen or the?
I'm seeing your slide deck.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Julie.
Okay.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining and taking out 1 hour from your work. As Julie said, we'll be talking about HADR solutions particularly for Azure SQL Database in cloud. So first question probably many of you are going to ask is, why should we talk about this? And this is a real scenario that happened in January of this year in UK region, that some of the services were out, was not available for 16 hour and 11 minute. And of course I can see your hand, but if I ask you to raise your hand, that how many of you will be able to accept an outage of your SQL Server or Azure SQL Database for 16 hours plus I'm sure many of you will say, no, you cannot afford, or the business that you are supporting, yeah, you cannot afford that. And so this talk is how do we solve that? Because using Azure or using Azure SQL Database, we still have hardware. We are still using servers, maybe virtual machines at somebody else's data center. So things can go wrong. And we need to have a plan in place before we go live with production databases, that how do we recover or how do we mitigate in this kind of situations. Now, your requirement may be different. Everybody might not be up 24/7, 365 days. Some people probably or will be able to take some kind of downtime, and that probably be okay for their business. The recovery time can vary depending on your business, right? So I'll show you a couple of options. We'll compare, contrast, and so give you the information so you can decide what's appropriate for your business, and you should be able to, at the end of this, have some idea what are the solutions available to you and how you can implement some of this. Because we only have an hour and we are already past 7 minutes, if I do not answer all the questions, or you have further questions or queries, I'll give you my contact at the end. You can reach out to me, and if I do not know the answer, I'll find it and try to help you out. You should be able to send me email or tweet or whatever works for you. So I'll give you those at the end. One more thing is at the end, I also added 3 more slides, which I'm not going to talk about. I put those as an additional slide because of the time. I'll skip those, but I put those there. If you have further questions, please reach out to me later on offline. So anytime we talk about business continuity, there is 2 terms that probably most of you are familiar with if you're working with databases for a while. They are called RTO and RPO. What these are basically is how long it takes me to recover and up to what point I can recover to. To give you an example, if I'm taking my transaction log backup every 15 minutes, and if something happened between the 2 transaction log backups, I might lose up to 14 minute 59.999 seconds of data. Is that acceptable for my business? And even if it's acceptable, how much time I need to get my last full backup, get my diff backup, where are those stored? Do I need to copy those to somewhere else? How much time I need to spin up a brand new server, and how much time I need to restore? So that's my recovery time objective. In cloud, of course, things change because we'll talk about the backup solutions that we get with Azure SQL Database, but this term is still valid. But now there is a new term that's being introduced, which is called ERT. That's estimated recovery time. So depending on what solutions we put in place, our recovery time might change. And the way they define ERT is my maximum ERT is my recovery time objective. So I need to know the solutions that I'm putting in place and what will be my maximum recovery time based on my solutions. And that's the RTO I should declare, or I should make it clear to the business that with this kind of solutions, in case if you have a disaster, of course we know what point we can recover to, but how much time we'll need to recover. So they know that how much time they will be out of business. And if that is acceptable, then before you implement the solution, you should agree with the business if that is acceptable to all the parties. So I put kind of a slide diagram here that you can see just to visualize what we call RPO and RTO. So if you look from the left of the slide, business was on, and then the disaster strike. There is a green and a blue color, but I cannot recover to the first dot. I can recover up to the second dot. So I'm going to lose the data between the whatever that green line is, and that blue line represent my RPO. And then from there all the way, my recovery complete time, and that's my RTO. That's my recovery time objective. So I need even though I can recover up to the second dot, but I need from there up to the last dot, I need that time to recover my data. Whatever I do it will depend on my solution. Now, this is a slide that I copied from Books Online. And if you see here, I'm not going to read everything, but one thing you notice that with active geo replication, if you look at the last row, your ERT and RPO drastically reduce from 12 hour to 1 hour, and RPO also change from 1 hour or 1 week to 5 seconds. So this gives you also, I broke it down based on the tier. So Azure SQL Database have different tiers. If you go with the DTU model, then you have 3 different tiers. If you go with the vCore model, then you have 2 different solutions there, 2 different tiers. So based on those 2 tiers, RPO, RTO change, and also depending on what kind of solutions you are putting. Now, for some people, if you look at the automated backup here on the first row, you can restore to any point, right? But this doesn't tell you how much time you need to restore, because the backups are always available to you. But depending on the size of your backup, your RTO will change. And if you go beyond 35 days, if you need to restore, that's on the third line, the restore from SQL long-term retention, which we'll talk about more details. You can see that your RPO also drastically change, because on the long-term backup retention, it's bi-weekly, so you cannot go any granular, than 1 week. But you can always restore your backup to a different region, because your backups always get copied to a different region behind the scene. Over there, you can recover up to last 1 hour, but it might take 12 hours, up to 12 hours. So again, what I said at the beginning, yes, I can recover up to 1 hour, but it will need 12 hours. So is that an acceptable solution for some business? Yes. Like where currently I work, we have databases that they don't care any backups older than 2 weeks. They say if we have to go beyond 2 weeks, we rather reprocess everything and rebuild most of our tables. So, but that's not the solution that we can implement for all the apps that I support in my current workplace. So, if you do not have ASLA that's aggressive, if you can be down for 12 hours, your change rate is slow, backups may be a solution for you. But if that is not, then we'll talk about other solutions, primarily active geo replication. And on top of that, now they also have failover groups. So automatic backup frequency. So in cloud, currently, you do not have to take a backup manually. Backups are continuously being taken behind the scene. So one thing I put here, and I said like lose control of precise RPO. Why? Because on-prem, I can control my transaction log backup time. I can say take backup every 5 minutes. In cloud, you cannot. So if you go to Books Online, they put this term generally every 5 to 10 minutes. And for deep backups, they call it generally every 12 hours. So I really do not have a precise control on the timings. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of it. So it's not like on-prem, I can go to SQL Server Agent, I can create a job or a PowerShell, I can call a job and take deep backup and transaction log backups at the precise time. I do not have that control anymore with Azure SQL Database. And this is a table that your full set taken weekly, differentials every 12 hours. I put the asterisk because it's, as I said before, and transaction logs between 5 to 10 minutes. And they are retained from 7 to 35 days, depending on what tier you are on. They're automatically saved for you, and they also get copied to a different region behind the scene. Now, for regulatory requirement, like I work in a financial servicing company, we need to keep our backups for a longer period. For those, or if you're in healthcare, I worked before, you probably have that kind of mandate. For that, Azure SQL Database also have another solution. They call this automatic backup long-term retention, and it's up to 10 years. This doesn't take extra backups. It actually leverage your automatic regular backups, the point in time restore backups. It just take copies from there. Also, these long-term backups get copied to a geo redundant storage, which is you have read access all the time. And I know this slide might be confusing. I could not find a better way to represent this. So if you see, the lowest granularity we have is a weekly, and then monthly, and then yearly. So I can keep any backup, any weekly backup for a certain number of weeks, and I can say keep this weekly backup for so many months and so many years. And you can, I'll show you in the demo how you can create those. And once you set that up, it's automated. You don't have to worry about it. It's always there. If you need, you can recover from there. What are your restore options? So I can restore a backup on the same logical server with a different name. I cannot have the same name. If I delete a database, the backups doesn't get deleted. So to give you an example, if I'm in a premier tier, my backups are saved for 35 days. If I delete a database after 7 days, I still have 28 days that I can restore from the backup on the same logical server, on a different region, on a different logical server. No problem. There's two things you want to keep in mind. You cannot restore with the same name. So if you ever need to, you have to rename and then restore with the previous name. Other thing is, if you delete your server, all the backups get deleted. So if you delete a database, you can still recover. But if you delete your logical SQL server, you cannot recover. So you want to be careful there. This slide is not related to recovering in Azure SQL Database, but a lot of time I get this question that can we restore a Azure SQL Database backup on-prem? You cannot literally take that backup and restore, but there's other ways. You can create backpack files and you can restore using any of these tools that I listed on the right side. And I also, in my demo code, if we have time, we'll restore one of the backups in on-prem. If I don't have time, I can send the slide code any of you need, and you should be able to see how we can do this. I only showed one method, but there are 6 different ways you can deploy to take your Azure SQL Database and make a copy in your on-prem SQL server. So mainly for high availability of Azure SQL Database, there are truly 2 different models. So you are looking at 2 different models. On the left side, I call this a standard. On the right side, it's premium. So the difference between these two, if you look at on the left side, actually, it's my apology. I put the tags wrong. So the standard should be on the right and the premium on the left. Sorry about that. So let's look at on the right side. If you see that your compute and storage is separate. So you have SSD cache with your compute, and your data file and your log file is separated from there. And this is deployed, if you go with the basic, standard, and general purpose service tier, that is what you get. So if you do a failover, your compute is going to get failed over, but you are still attached to the same storage. And if your storage get destroyed, then yes, you can recover, but it's going to take a little bit longer time for up on those tiers. And if you look at the left, which Microsoft call is a premium tier, premium and business critical, you use all SSD attached storage with your compute. So your data and log file also continuously getting copied. So if you have 4 copies, 1 primary and 3 secondaries, you literally have 4 copies of your data and log file. And we'll talk about the replication mechanism. And you get another, if you see at the bottom, that's your storage for your backups. So primarily you get, whatever solutions we talk about, other than your backup, primarily you are leveraging this technology for your HADR solutions. Now, most of the solutions that we will be talking about are built on always-on availability group, which if you're on-prem on SQL 2012 and plus, I'm sure many of you are using this on-prem. In my current workplace, 95% of SQL servers on-prem, we are using always-on availability group for our HADR solution. And you get this in Azure SQL Database on the premium and business critical tier. You have local attached SSD, as I showed you on the previous slide, and those get copied, and you can fail over within 5 milliseconds from one node to another node. And this is a visual representation what we talked about before. And also on the Azure SQL Database, you can do the same. Like on-prem, you can move your read-only workload to one of the secondaries because you get 2 endpoints. One is your read-write, one is your read-only. And they are constantly getting replicated asynchronously from your primary to all other 3 secondary copies. Now, this is a pretty new feature that Microsoft deployed. Because Microsoft is saying, we give you 4 copies anyway for any tier. So for premium and business tier, they opened this out. Now what you can do, even you do not set up an active geo replication, because you have redundant copies, you can take leverage of the second copies. So you can turn on your read scale out. If you turn this on, you can use one of those secondary nodes for your read traffic. So if you have reporting need or you have your analytical queries, you can put your application intent property on your connection string, and it will automatically redirect your connection to a secondary replica. I know this is not a disaster recovery solution, but I'm still, I want to mention this because, it doesn't cost you anything. So why not take advantage of it, right? But one thing you have to remember, the logs are asynchronously replicated. So you will have a lag. I mean, they're transactionally consistent, but you're not guaranteed to have every transaction committed on both the nodes. So you have to be careful on that. So you can be, behind by a few seconds. But if your read-only traffic can live with that, then you can deploy this solution. Okay. So when initially Azure SQL Database was deployed or was released as a general availability, you always get 4 copies, or at least 3, at least 3 copies. Now, all 3 copies could be in one data center within a region. So if you did not deploy active geo replication, and if a data center is out, you really don't have a redundancy. Even though you have multiple copies, right? You might lose all the copies. Now, this is a new feature they call availability zone. What you can do, if you turn this on, you are guaranteed to have your 3 copies in 3 different data center within a region. And so you are guaranteed to have your power, your cooling, and you compute redundancy at least in 3 different data centers. And this is still not enabled in all the region, but I put a link at the end in the resource page that you can go and see. So depending on which region you are, if it is there, then you should take advantage of this. And you are guaranteed to have the same tier in all 3 availability zone. So if you are failing over, or if one data center is out, you should be able to operate with the same capacity. So this is just another picture that's showing you that you are into 3 different data center within a region. And this is another a representation of if you have the redundancy, and then how it's laid out. And if you turn on your application intent equal to read write and application intent into read only, how it's going to redirect your traffic automatically to between 2 different nodes. Few points here. So this is disabled by default, and it's only available into premium or business tier, and currently it's in preview. It's not a general availability yet, and this will impact your performance a little bit, because once you turn this on, because now you are into 3 different data centers and they are synchronously replicated, meaning if you make a call to your primary, you are not going to get your acknowledgement back unless till it's get replicated to all three nodes. So you might see your acknowledgement back time might increase, so you want to be aware of it. If you turn it on, and if you see there is an issue, you can always turn it off, and then behind the scene it will move all your nodes to the same data center to reduce your latency. So let's talk about active Geo Replication. So this is the best solution that Microsoft offered today. As we saw on the chart, that your RTO RPO is drastically reduced with this. You can fail over pretty much. The published RPO is 5 seconds, and one thing you want to be careful when you set this up, you want to make sure that all your servers are on the same tier, and otherwise, once you fail over, you might see some performance issue. And your firewall rules and your security also needs to be in sync between the nodes. And Microsoft has some guidelines about it. So like, you want to use the users that contained within your database. This is available in Azure SQL Database, so you are not tied up to your master database for a login. And how you deploy your firewall rules. You want to make sure that you deploy deploy it automatically, so it's deployed to all the nodes at the same time. Because once you fail over, if your firewall rules are not in sync, you might have a problem connecting to your to your new primary node. Again, here you will never have partial transactions because it uses snapshot isolation level behind the scene. So transactionally, you are always consistent. But again, as I said before, you might not have all the transactions available. Once you fail over, it might take some time to sync up. So this is a presentation of how this is set up. As you can see from your user device, you come to the traffic manager, and then you have load balancer. It goes and it detects your primary and your secondary, and based on your connection string, it will send you to the primary for your read write, and if you put read only, it will send you to your secondary. And once you fail over, it will automatically switch your role for the read write, but it will not switch your role for the read only. You have to manually switch it, and we'll talk about it once when we go and talk about more into details and see the demo. Now, you might have transactions that you definitely want to be guaranteed that they are copied to the secondary before you send the acknowledgement to the caller. In that case, once you have a bunch of transactions, and you can call this store proc. Once you call it, what it does, it guarantees that your transaction has been replicated to the secondary node, and it doesn't guarantee that it's replayed, but once it's copied, then it will get replayed. So that way you are guaranteed not to lose that transaction. So you can deploy this in your code if you have that kind of transactions that you cannot afford to lose in any way. And this is another code I just put as a sample. And there are more columns to this DMV that you can check your status of your replication, how much lag is there. And if you ever need to control this and control your transaction, I'm sure you can do something programmatically with this. So active Geo Replication is still today, and it's true also on-prem. It's per database. So you might have multiple databases that you need to fail over at the same time for your application to support. And as you know, on-prem, we have availability groups. So Microsoft released this recently last year, at the end of last year, called Failover groups. Same concept. You can bundle multiple databases and put them in a group, and then you can fail that group at the same time. So once you fail that group, all your databases will fail over at the same time. By default, your automatic failover is on. So if it detects an issue with a single database within the failover group, it will fail over the whole group. And you do not have to do anything with your connection string. Once it fail over, the connection string will remain the same. And one caveat here, you have to be in the same subscription for your secondary node. And with active Geo Replication, the availability group, you replicate to 4 different nodes, but with active failover groups, you only can failover to a single node. And we'll see this in the demo. So this is pretty much the same picture we saw 2 slides ago, but if you see here, I put another boxes there, it's called the listeners. So now you are really not hard coding your server name anymore. The listener will take care of itself. So if you fail over, you do not have to do anything because you are pointing to the listener, and listener will figure out which node is the primary and which node is the secondary. So as I said, you only have one secondary in a different region. Your read-only listener is disabled for failover. So once you fail over, your both traffic will go to the same node, but then you can manually fail over your read-only traffic once the other node is up, or you can keep it on the same. It's up to you. You have to make a choice manually for your read-only traffic, but your read-write will automatically get diverted to the new primary. So you get 2 endpoints, and as I said before, you don't have to create this listener manually. You automatically get that once you create your failover group, and you just use this in your connection string, and then behind the scenes you'll take care of it by itself. So that's enough for the slide, and the rest of it is demo. So I'm going to switch my presentation a little bit. Julie, I can take 1 or 2 questions at this time.
Right, so Tab, I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay. Okay, good. So do you see my demo screen, Julie?
Yes, I do.
Julie, do you see my screen for the code?
Yes, I do. I see the PowerShell's
Allows you yes, so I'm
script
going to continue.
PS1.
So what I did before the presentation started, to save time, I ran the code from here all the way, and I can send this code for everybody up to here. And what this did is, this is my Azure portal. I basically created 3 SQL Server, and on this one, I created 2 database. So I created this just to save us some time, and I'll continue the demo from here. So we talked about long-term backup, right? So if we go to this server, and if we go to manage backup, currently we see that our regular backups are retained for 35 days, but we do not have any long-term backup setup. So, and I'm using the new PowerShell AJ module for everything. And you can look up books online for all the commands. So we're just checking what's the current long-term retention policy. And as you can see, we do not have anything set up. It's all 0. And what I'm doing here, I'm saying, create a long-term backup policy, keep my weekly backups for 12 weeks, keep my 16th backup for 5 years. And I do not have any monthly retention. And I know, pausing between the demos is a bad idea, but we'll have few pauses because this thing needs to run. And Julie can, ping me questions if there is any. In between, I can answer some questions when I'm running this. So we set this up, and now we can come here and we can see that our 16th week backup will be retained for 5 years, and every weekly backup we're going to keep for 12 weeks. Again, if we want to see this with PowerShell, if we do not want to go to the GUI or to the portal, we can also see it from here. As you can see here, it's the weekly ones are 12 week of the year 16, keeping it for 5 year, and the monthly, there is no retention. And I'm not going to run this. If you want to remove your long-term retention for any reason, this is the command you can run, and it will remove your retentions for the long-term retentions. I talked about read scale out. So by default, if we want to see this, this is disabled. So by default, it's not turned on. And if you want to turn it on, this is the command. You read scale enable, and I pass those variables with my server name, database name, and resource group name. And we can check this from our management studio. So I'm connecting to the same server, and if I remove this, it says read write. But now if we change our connection string, you cannot use statement with Azure SQL Database. You always have to change it here to get the right context of the database. And now you can see it's read only. So it's actually, sending it to a different node. We talked about active Geo Replication. So let's see if, yeah. So here I'm taking a database and then passing it to set up the active Geo Replication. And this is at a database level. So if we go to the portal, you can see this, that is being set up from here to here. And if we go down here, I can see my East US2 is my primary. And now I'm setting a secondary in the central US. So one point I want to make here is if you go to the documentation, Microsoft also have recommended pairs that how you should pair your active Geo Replication, meaning if this is your A is your primary, what should be your B? So Microsoft has a chart, and for East US, Microsoft recommend to use Central US as your secondary. And as you see here, it really doesn't change. It just, once it's complete, you will see it there. It doesn't give you a % every time unless I refresh. So this is still being set up. And if you need to fail over manually, you can do it from here. You can also do it from the GUI, and I'll show you once this is done. So this is done now. And you can see that we are not seeing those dotted line anymore, means it's all set up here. And I can do a forced failover. I can stop my replication also. And if I want to see this, I can pin to my dashboard, and I should be able to see the status all the time. Julie, if you see any question, you can stop me anytime.
So Tab, I see one question. Can you hear me?
So you're doing a failover now. And if we refresh this, if you see here now, the primary is Central US. And you can see here that it's failing over. And now East US, even though this is my server name, but this has become your secondary. I'm surprised that it doesn't show the dot lines here. Okay. So now it's readable over there. I'm going to fail back so my demo works, the subsequent demos work. So, and we'll move on. Let it work. Now, as I said, if you see here, I had to put a database name, means it's part database. And if we want to put multiple databases, we want to fail over, fail back at the same time, we need to create a failover group. And one of the parameters here is called grace period with data loss hours. So what it does, if you're gracefully failing over your failover group, you don't have to worry about this. But if it's automatically failed over, and if it waits up to 2 hours for database to sync before it fails over. So you want to be careful with this time that if you have a huge database And if you know your regular lag, how much this is, your regular latency, you might want to adjust this. So the minimum that you can put right now is in 1 hour, and I think you can go up to 24 hours. But you definitely want to be, collect some metrics before you set this up and maybe test this before you put this in production. So you create a failover group, and then I add the databases right here, one by one, whatever number I want to add in my failover group. So if we come here, and this is at a server level because you can have multiple databases. As you can see, right now, this is my primary, my secondary, I have one failover group, and my grace period is 120 minutes. I do not have any database count, right? And if I click here, this gives me more details. I do not have any database. I can add database from here, or I can do it from here. And you can do a lot of stuff. You can failover gracefully, force failover, you can delete, add database, and pretty much you can operate it from here. And now it's seeding that database. Should be able to see 1 of 1. And 1 of 1 means I only have one database that qualified to be added in the group. If I have 3, 4 databases, it would say 1 of whatever number is that. And I can see this database right now. And this is online, this is read only. One thing I want to show you is these are your endpoints. So right now, if we copy this, so this is our primary, but we are not giving the server name. We said failover group UG, that's our group name database.windows.net. We connect to this. And if we look at the server name, I know it's too small, so I'm going to copy it here. So this is our server name, but if we go and take the other endpoint, it has a secondary here. And now it's connecting us to the other server. I'm not going to run this code. I just copied this here, put it here. So if you need it, you can fail over. And you can also, with this command, you can always check the status of your failover. As I promised before that, I'm going to show you one of the restore from Azure to your on-prem. So what we'll do, we'll take this database, we'll create a backpack file, and then I'll restore it in my local instance. And just so you see this, I do not have a database name SQL Database UG. So and I'm copying it locally. You can always put it in a blob storage, in Azure storage. You can bring it on-prem, whatever storage you have. I'm saying it's putting in my C drive. And now it's going to extract the Azure SQL database and it's going to create a backpack file and copy it to my C drive with this name. Julie, any questions?
Tab, can you hear me? There was one question, and I put it into the chat.
Okay, so somebody said in the portal, you see two icons. One is a SQL database, one is a SQL server. So in cloud with Azure SQL Database, and I'm not talking about managed instance, one thing you have to remember is the server is kind of a logical server. You really do not have a concept of the way on-prem that we have, MSDB and all those system databases we don't get. Every database is by itself. So, there is workaround for like cross database join and stuff, but like 4-part name is not allowed and all that. So if somebody asks a question, what is the difference? So if I click here, I can see my 3 different servers that I created. And as you can see here, it was my slide anyway. And if I go here, these are my databases within those servers. So it gives you the server name. So I have the same database in these 2 servers because we set up active Geo Replication. I also had another server to show you the read scale out. And it has 1 database. And it also, inside it tells you that, this is the server name and this is the database name, server name, database name. So that's the difference. Okay, so now we got the backpack file. We can try to go and see this. This is the backpack file. It just created 12:52 p.m. And I already dropped it manually, but if you have to drop the database, you might want to double check if it exists. And now I'm restoring into my local instance here, into this laptop. As you can see, this database is right now here. It got restored. And at the end, I have a cleanup, all the resource group that will clean up all the resources that I created. So let's go back to the slide and we'll finish up. Okay, so these are some of the options that we talked about. Automatic backups. So you said always on availability group, everything is based on. Read scale out, really not a HADR solution, but I still want to mention it. Availability zones, you do not have to pay for it. It's there. You might want to take advantage of it. So you have redundancy at the data center level. Active Geo Replication, you have redundancy per Azure region. And you also have auto failover group if you need to bundle a bunch of databases at the same time. You have to failover, failback together. These are some of the resources. They all have URLs. So if you click it, it will take you to the Books Online page. And this is something about me. I'm going to skip this slide. It has my blog URL and stuff. These are some of my contacts, and I do monitor all of this. So you might want to take a note. If you have questions that you didn't ask or we didn't talk about, you can send those to me, and I'll definitely answer those. And thank you so much for joining. And I have a few more slides at the end that we'll not talk about. Those are for accelerated database recovery. That's applicable for large databases that you can recover pretty quickly. So that's all. Julie, are you on mute or no? So we are done. If no question, thank you very much. You guys, again, can contact me with anything that I did not talk about or I did not answer your question.
Tab, are you able to hear me? If so, I wanted to thank you for your time and your presentation.
No, Julie, we cannot hear you, but I know the recording will be available and I think there will be a survey.
That's fine. So thank you everybody for attending, and we will be posting the slide deck to our virtual chapter website page. Thank you.